Today on Sugar Spun Run, I'll be showing you how to make an eclair cake. Hey Sugar Spun Bakers, Sam here, and today I am so excited to be sharing another carefully tested, well-researched, and perfected recipe. Now, as you can probably guess, today's recipe is based off of eclairs, except we're making them into cake form. Now, this recipe is certainly not my own invention, but so many of the versions that are out there today are made with instant vanilla pudding and Cool Whip, and those of you who have been following me for a while know that I am not all about that. So we are going to be making the pastry cream filling and the whipped cream that goes into the filling completely from scratch. I'm so excited to share this one with you, so let's go ahead and get started. Now in a bowl or a large measuring cup, you're going to want to combine 1.5 cups of heavy cream, which I already have measured out, and 1.5 cups of whole milk. Now today's recipe uses 5 egg yolks, so we're going to separate these. Easiest way to do that is just crack your egg and then pass the yolk back and forth between the two halves of the shell until all of the white falls out. If you see any stringy white proteins on the side like we have here, you're going to want to try to scrape those off and leave those with the whites. We don't really want them in our pastry cream. Now you can save these egg whites and use them for a different recipe like I will be doing later. I will even include some recipes that use just egg whites in the recipe notes in case you don't want to waste any. So once you've added 5 egg yolks, you'll want to use a whisk to whisk together the egg yolks, the cream, and the milk until the yolks are all well broken up. Now we'll just set this aside for a second and we're going to head over to our stovetop. Now you're going to need a medium-sized saucepan, and in this we're going to combine 3/4 cup of granulated sugar, 1/4 cup of cornstarch, and a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now, using another whisk, we are going to whisk these ingredients together, and while whisking, we are going to drizzle in that cream egg yolk mixture. Doing it this way helps prevent any lumps that can form, like sometimes the cornstarch likes to form little lumps, and this just helps prevent that. Once this is nice and smooth, we are going to turn our stovetop heat to medium, and we are going to just stir constantly until the mixture begins to thicken. So you do not want to do this process too fast. Don't turn your heat up too high, or what will end up happening is you'll cook those egg yolks, your sugar won't dissolve properly, and you will have a lumpy, pretty gross mess. So just have a little bit of patience, keep the heat on medium, and keep whisking. All right, so I can see things are starting to thicken here, and I don't want to let this linger too long, but I do want to give you a really good idea of what you're looking for. So maybe you can see that the whisk is leaving trails through the pudding or pastry cream, and if I take a spoon and stir that in there, you can see the back of the spoon is completely coated with a thin layer of pudding, and if I run my finger through it, it leaves a trail that holds its shape. The pudding doesn't, or pastry cream doesn't flow back over that. So this is looking great, so I am going to immediately remove it from the heat, and now I want to get it out of this saucepan. So I want to pour it into a large bowl, but because little pieces of egg may have cooked in there, sometimes that happens despite your best intentions, or just in case there are any other lumps in here, I want to run this through a fine mesh strainer. So you can see I have one over the bowl. Just pour that through the strainer. So you can even see I have a couple lumps in there. We don't want that in our pastry cream. Now to help make this pastry cream even more rich, we're going to add in some butter. I have 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter, and I'm just going to stir this in 1 tablespoon at a time, stirring until the butter is melted after each addition. And on this last tablespoon, I'm also going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. All right, so our pastry cream is looking beautiful, but before we can go any further with this, we want to let it cool completely. I'm going to let it sit at room temperature for about 20 minutes, stirring it occasionally so we don't get a skin on top, and then I'm going to want to pop it in the fridge so it can cool completely. Once again, a skin will form on top if you just leave it as is. So to prevent this, you're going to want to take a piece of parchment or wax paper, or I'm using plastic wrap, and just press that directly against the surface of the pastry cream. And it's really important that I stress that you want to let this cool completely before you go any further. Now, once your pastry cream has chilled or is almost completely chilled, we can prepare our homemade whipped cream, which we're going to fold into that pastry cream for a really lush filling. Now for your whipped cream, we're just going to combine 1.5 cups of heavy whipping cream, 1/2 cup of powdered sugar, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Now use an electric mixer and beat everything together until you've achieved thick, stiff peaks. You want to have a very thick, billowy mixture. All right, this is looking pretty good. Let me show you exactly what it looks like. See how thick and stiff this is? Don't stop shy of this or your mixture, it's already a pretty thin mixture when all is said and done. You want to help bolster it with a nice thick cream. Now, once your pastry cream has cooled completely, we're going to want to combine the whipped cream and the pastry cream. Just going to scrape all of this whipped cream in there and just fold the two together. You want to use a spoon or a spatula for this point and just stir them together until they're completely combined and the mixture is nice and smooth. We are going to assemble this Eclair cake in a 13x9 baking dish. So I've grabbed one of those and I've also grabbed, you'll need about 30 graham crackers. Now I'd love to share a homemade recipe for graham crackers with you, but we're not quite there yet. So today we are using store-bought just for this part. Now we're just going to put an even layer of graham crackers into the bottom of the pan. And then we are going to layer half of our pastry cream / whipped cream filling over those graham crackers. Make that nice and smooth as you can. And then we will gently nestle another row of graham crackers on top of that layer of pastry cream. Of course, you can break them if you need to make everything fit. All right, we will use the rest of our pastry cream. Smooth that out. And then one final layer of graham crackers. Now, every eclair needs that nice glossy chocolate topping, so we are going to make a really simple ganache. You could do this on the stovetop, but I'm just going to do mine in the microwave to save a little bit of time. Now you're going to need 6 ounces of chocolate. You can use a finely chopped baking bar, or you can use couverture chocolate. Couverture, I always say it wrong, but I did want to note that these are not regular chocolate chips. They are a special kind of chocolate, especially meant to be melted and used for tempering and that sort of thing. Your results may vary if you just use standard chocolate chips, but a coarsely chopped baking bar would absolutely work instead. Add 3/4 cup of heavy cream, and we are going to just take this over to the microwave where I'm going to heat it in about 30-second intervals, stirring in between until the chocolate is completely melted. Let me switch over to my whisk here. I want to show you that this looks really grainy and piecey, but as I continue to stir everything, it becomes a nice, silky, smooth chocolate ganache. All right, let's pour this evenly over our prepared Eclair cake. Spread that out so it's nice and smooth. I love this ganache. All right, all that's left to do now is pop this Eclair cake in the fridge where it's going to need to sit for at least several hours or preferably overnight. As it sits, obviously the chocolate will harden, but also those graham cracker layers in the middle, they're going to soften and become cake-like in consistency, which is really nice. Of course, I have an Eclair cake that I prepared last night, so let's go ahead and dig in. All right, this cake is pretty soft and slicing it into pieces can kind of be a pain. I don't know, maybe if you're lazy like me, you just want to kind of scoop it out by the spoonful, but I'm going to try to get you a nice cut. The first cut is always really messy, so I'm going to make a big cut and discard that and not show you guys. I call that the husband piece. That's Zach's piece that he gets as a reward for watching me behind the camera all this time. All right, now let's see if we can get a decent piece out of here. Okay, so a little messy, took me a couple tries, but I finally got a pretty nice looking presentable piece. As I said though, if you're struggling with getting clean slices, just scoop it out by the spoonful. No judgment here. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed today's recipe, and if you try this one out, please let me know what you think. I always love hearing from you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Love this.